The 1-4 profile in traditional human design, this is known as the Investigator Opportunist, or as I like to say, the researcher mayor. Your inner thirst and curiosity for knowledge uniquely positions you as an expert who can impact the lives of those who are in your community. You are here to discover and share that knowledge with those around you. Honor your desire for self-discovery and research and balance it with your yearning to share that knowledge with the world around you. Cultivating a thriving community that allows you to share this knowledge with them, it's important. Your network determines your success. In order for you to live your highest expression, a sense of security, a foundation, and a cultivated community is key. All right, so let's dive into the 1-4 researcher mayor profile. So these are people who are sort of inwardly focused, right? They have a process that requires them to go within. And that is just the nature of the first line, right? And the reality is these are people who their profiles are sort of in tension with themselves in some ways, because that first line, it wants to kind of hermit away. It wants to research. It wants to investigate. And then that fourth line, you know, it wants to be with people. It needs alone time, but it also wants to be with people. This is a profile that is what we would call resonant in human design, because the first line is the foundation of the lower trigram, and the fourth line is the foundation of the upper trigram. And I know that's like very human designees speak, but just know these two lines are here to establish a foundation. Both of them are, and they're just doing it in different ways. The first line is really the foundation of safety and security, and the fourth line is really this foundation of community, right? And so there are these themes here that has this connection with others, influence, safety, and security. And really the 1-4 is here to impact people on a personal level. But the reality is that as a 1-4, these are people who yearn to share the knowledge that they have with other people. They yearn to influence other people. But the reality is their success is in direct correlation to their network. So the themes here we have is moving from weakness, not safe, to safe, strong, or confident in the first line. And then in the fourth line, it's like this dependent, moving from this place of dependent on other people to being a benefactor for other people. You're a confidant of mine or you're not. And so when these two come together, you know, that first line moves through the world in a way where it investigates and it researches and it wants to gain knowledge, right? And it needs to gain that knowledge in order to feel secure and confident and an expert. And then we've got the fourth line, which is the first of the upper trigram, the transpersonal lines. These are people who sort of move methodically and deliberately through the world, right? The fourth line, really, I like to call this the mayor. The fourth line mayor, you know, just wants to like do its thing. It doesn't want to be in limbo. It doesn't want a lot of disruption. It wants people to accept them for who they are. Fourth line's really like they'll often secure a new job or a new relationship or a new house or a new project before they've left the first one. And these are people who just want to be accepted as they are. They don't want to be changed. But the success of their network and the success of their lives is really dependent upon their network. So when we bring these two profiles together, or two lines together, these are people whose secure foundation is of the utmost importance. Neither one of these lines do well when there isn't a foundation in place. these are not people who adapt to change quickly, right? You throw a 3-5 out into the playing field in business, they're going to be quick to adapt, right? Those are going to be the people that are like jumping on the trends, or just like, hey, something goes wrong, let me pivot, let me change, let me adjust. When you have a 1-4 here, these are not people who move quickly. I kind of think of anytime there's a four in a profile, it's almost like trying to turn a cruise ship or a tanker ship. Like, they need to have lots of information. They have to have like proof that this is the right thing. And so the reality is, when this profile comes together, these lines are in harmony with each other, but this profile is one that really has to balance their introspection, right? Their investigative researching process in their first line, with connection in their fourth line, right? Because the 1-4 is uniquely positioned to have a big impact on the world. And they really have this desire to gain knowledge in order to share it with other people. But they aren't necessarily here to create something entirely new either, right? Like, when we were speaking of the 1-3 is like they're moving research forward. The 1-4 is not doing this. It's like, let me gain this knowledge so I can influence people. And that is a very important distinction to understand, that when you have that 1-4, that's what's happening here, right? So these are people who have to learn to balance alone time and time in introspection and time in their process researching and acquiring knowledge. And then they also have to have time in their community, because the way in which the fourth line influences is through listening and understanding the needs of their community. And so these are people who need to find that balance. And the 1-4 has to understand that it's not going to get its creativity in community, but it will find it in its alone time. So these are people who may, in fact, spend lots of time in solitude. That can be deeply healing to them. And as a result, when they do that, they often will bring a lot of richness to the lives of the people around them. The challenges with this profile are that they can spend a great deal of time, sometimes more than necessary, gaining knowledge before they share it with their network. And the reality is, for them to be successful, they need to share that knowledge with their network. They need to influence their network. And the other pieces here is, if they spent too much time sort of in solitude in their research mode, they won't have a network to actually influence, right? There's no one there to share the knowledge with. And so there's this balance here for them where they have to really find that. The other pieces here is, when you have a fourth line, these are people who just want to be accepted as they are. They don't like resistance. They move very methodically through the world. So they make a plan and they stick with it, right? And so it's important for those in a 1-4's life, or any fourth line in particular, but particularly in a 1-4, that they're going to make a plan and they're going to stick with it, right? And so sharing this, particularly as an entrepreneur, with your team and the people in your life, becomes really important, right? Becomes really important. So when we think about the challenges here, is these are people who also want to be told the truth, right? These are people who just want you to tell it like it is, even if it's not necessarily positive. And the reality is, fourth lines are very accepting of people. So, 1-4 children, as an example, they really, yearn to be accepted as they are. They don't do well, and can often be pretty wounded when they've had a parent that's been very critical, or tried to change them, or didn't accept them for who they are. And that really, I see it in adulthood, right? Because everyone that I work with is an adult. But oftentimes in a 1-4 adult, it leads to this place where they are having a hard time feeling confident, right? Because they didn't have that support that they needed as a child, right? And so these are people, the 1/4s are people who see the good in people. They accept people as they are, and they expect the same in return. And it's important to understand that these are also people who are deeply fixed, right? These are people who have a strong belief system. They know what they believe, and it's really hard to get them to change their mind. This can work for and against them, particularly in business. It can become a blind spot because there is a certain lack of awareness, I guess. I hate that. I hate to even say that. That's not really the right word, but because of the fact that they are so fixed, they might not see things from somebody else's point of view, or they might be slow to adapt, and therefore they don't evolve, particularly in a business climate, quick enough. But the reality is their fixedness also allows them, this deep empathy towards other people, right? Because, they're like, here are my beliefs, there are your beliefs, I accept you, right? And there's this deep empathy that also comes with that. And the reality is these are people, the 1/4 is here to support the evolution of moving the species forward, right? They are here to really, establish this foundation and influence their network. And these are people who can impact lots and lots and lots of people. Like they have big influence when they are aligned to their design. So some questions that you can ask a 1/4 profile are as follows. What are you immersing yourself in? What are you studying about? How are you nurturing your network? How much research is enough? Do you have a secure foundation in place? What are you curious about? Where are you giving your power away or are in indecision and limbo? And what is it going to take for you to feel ready in order to move forward? And then I would also add, is your research working in harmony with your network? So that is the 1/4 researcher mayor profile in human design. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you all soon.